The circular flow model is a model of markets. And more specifically, it's really a model of how markets interact with each other in a more macroeconomic scale. So, this really simplified version that's being shown to you right now shows an interaction between two basic categories of economic agents, participants in an economy. We're talking about interactions between firms versus households. And the way that they interact with each other is through two main types of markets: the product market and the factor market. Now, the circular flow model is trying to show us how the factors of production kind of feed into the goods and services in the economy, and how compensation for both kind of keeps the model flowing. So let's start out with the scenario where the factor of production is provided by households. Now, households are only going to provide this factor of production to one group, and that would be firms. So households provide some sort of factor of production. It could be the construction of an apartment. It could be the use of skills, such as a skilled barber, or it could be even the provision of just regular labor, like somebody who is going to fold clothes or going to assemble a product, somebody who is just meant to greet people and be a waiter, right? All these are factors of production in the form of either labor or capital, right? Not even so much capital being provided, but in the form of labor being provided by households. So households provide this labor in one form or another, depending on their skills, to firms, which use this factor of production, labor, and the skills within that labor to produce a range of goods or services. Those goods and services can be provided in what we call product markets. So in those product markets, you may see goods like blue jeans, haircuts, apartments for rent, all being provided as forms of goods and services. And who's going to consume those goods and services? Households. The same households that are providing the factors of production in the form of their labor. Now, how does this model work? How do these things flow? Well, we get an understanding here of what is being produced, right? And we get an understanding even of how it's going to be produced. It's being produced by households and their labor, their skill. And what is being produced are the things that skill, that labor is good at making. But how does this circular flow model graphically show the determination of who gets to keep the products, who gets the goods and services being produced? Well, it's through payments and compensation, right? When the households provide labor and skill the labor to firms, the firms compensate them for that factor of production. They pay them a salary, they pay them hourly earnings, they pay them a fee, some sort of compensation for the labor being provided. Now, those goods and services then that are provided by those same households are purchased by households. And those households purchase the goods and services by getting ownership of the good and service, and in return providing some sort of payment or cash, right, to the firms, which then use that payment or cash to compensate the households for their factors of production. So this is why it's circular, because what you basically have is that households provide a skill, some sort of labor, to the creation of a good through a firm, and then effectively those households purchase back their goods and services from the firm and give back to the firms the same cash that they were paid in. This would all be a little bit loopy if there was just one household in one firm. Basically, somebody who knows how to provide haircuts giving haircuts to themselves, or more realistic, somebody who knows how to make blue jeans only making blue jeans for Levi's so that they could purchase them. But it makes it simple to understand it that way, because then you get how circular this whole situation is. Although we're not all purchasing from the same firm that we're working for, what is effectively happening is that there are firms, there are people who employ people, and there are people who are employed. And the people who are employed get employed by these firms, and then the firms provide goods and services in the economy. The same people who are being employed then go and purchase these goods and services from these firms. And in that way, the money that those households got for working goes back to the firms so that those firms can compensate the households again and continue the cycle. Throughout all of this, right, all these markets, the product market and the factor market, and the different goods and services in these markets, all effectively abide by very similar versions of the supply and demand model. There's some level of supply of blue jeans, there's some level of demand for blue jeans. At some point, there is an equilibrium price and an equilibrium quantity where this is the amount of blue jeans that will be sold at this price point, and this is the point where we will ensure that the entire market is cleared. In other words, where all the blue jeans made are sold to every single person who is willing to purchase blue jeans at that price. The circular flow model just really wraps up for us what we've been covering for the entire chapter, which is that supply and demand is effectively a model of how we determine who gets what in the economy. But it's all an economy, right? So as much as we're determining who gets what within the economy, the same people who are on the receiving end of the good and service are the ones who are helping to provide those goods and services. So really, we know that the economy can make things, and then we use these markets to determine who gets what is made within the economy. But it is all still operating theoretically within this same circle of cash flowing to households, resources flowing to households, and households providing skills and buying goods and services and therefore providing cash back to the firms.